The sky hung low over the toxic sea, a sickly green haze blurring the horizon where the endless water met the polluted sky. Steelbone's battered vessel creaked and groaned as it drifted closer to a looming silhouette on the horizon, a rusted barge, pieced together from scrap and adorned with tattered flags that fluttered weakly in the foul wind. The barge was a beacon amidst the desolation, a sign that other souls still dared to navigate the treacherous, toxic waters beyond the city's fragile safety. Cal stood at the prow, his sharp eyes scanning the approaching vessel. The air was thick with the acrid stench of rust and chemical decay, the sea beneath swirling with ominous currents that threatened to pull them under. Beside him, Mira's fiery red hair whipped wildly as she clenched her fists, her piercing green eyes burning with suspicion. Jorin remained close to the engine room hatch, nervously adjusting the cracked glasses perched on his slender nose, while Lina moved among the crew, her satchel of herbs and supplies a small comfort against the unknown. Grav, ever watchful, tightened the straps on his heavy weaponry, muscles tensed like a predator ready to spring. The barge drew near, its patchwork hull creaking and groaning, metal plates rattling against one another. From its deck emerged a figure cloaked in layers of weathered fabric, face shadowed beneath a hood. Silver, the elusive merchant and informant, stepped aboard Steelbone's vessel with the cautious grace of someone who had learned to survive through guile and instinct. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, flickered with a cunning that immediately set the crew on edge. "Captain Cal," Silver greeted, voice low and smooth, carrying the weight of countless secrets. "I hear you rechasing ghosts beyond the forbidden waters." Cal nodded, his expression guarded. "And you're the one who might hold the keys to finding them." The exchange was cautious, words measured and sharp. Silver laid out her terms with practiced precision, rare parts salvaged from the sea's depths, information about rival scavenger factions, and crucial hints about the artifact's possible location. In return, she demanded access to supplies and a share of whatever the crew might claim. Mira's tension was palpable as she bristled beside Cal, fingers twitching near the grip of her weapon. "How do we know this isn't a trap?" Silver's smile was a slow, dangerous curve. "Trust is a luxury in these waters, Scout, but even enemies sometimes need allies." The night deepened as the crew and Silver's faction negotiated under the flickering light of a single lantern. The air was thick with distrust, each word a test of wills, each silence pregnant with threat. Jorin, clutching ancient schematics that Silver had procured, traced faded lines and symbols, his quiet intellect piecing together fragments of a story long buried beneath the toxic waves. "This changes everything," he murmured, eyes alight with newfound purpose. "We were closer than we thought, yet the victory was bittersweet." The alliance with Silver brought with it shadows, whispers of betrayals, hidden agendas, and the ever-present danger of the Warden's reach extending through the murky waters. As dawn approached, the barge slipped away, leaving Steelbone's crew to grapple with the consequences of their choice. On their vessel's deck, they gathered silently, the toxic sea stretching endlessly before them, a vast expanse of peril and possibility. Cal's gaze hardened with resolve. "We move forward together." But eyes wide open, Mira nodded, her fiery spirit tempered by the night's lessons. "No one gets left behind." The wind carried their words into the toxic haze, a promise forged in uncertainty and danger. The journey was far from over, the path ahead fraught with enemies and uneasy alliances. Yet amid the desolation, a fragile hope flickered, one born of survival, trust, and the unbreakable bonds of found family. And as Steelbone's battered vessel cut through the toxic waves once more, the crew prepared to face whatever shadows lurked beyond the horizon. The sky above Steelbone's drifting outskirts darkened unnaturally, a heavy pall of smoke and ash blotting out the toxic sun. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of burning circuits and scorched scrap, a grim herald of the storm to come. Cale stood at the edge of their encampment, eyes narrowed beneath furrowed brows as he scanned the horizon. There was no mistaking the sound that shattered the uneasy silence, the shrill, mechanical screech of the Warden's beasts. A sound that chilled the marrow and quickened the pulse. "They were coming," Mira said, her voice a mix of fire and steel as she tightened the straps on her gear, her vivid red hair pulled back into a fierce knot. "And this time it's worse." Cal's jaw clenched. "We knew this was coming. We prepared for it, didn't we?" "Prepared or not, we were outnumbered," Mira replied, her green eyes flashing as she scanned the approaching shadows. The Wardens brought new machines, bigger, faster, deadlier. The first wave crashed into their camp like a tidal wave of rusted steel and glowing red lenses. Mechanical beasts tore through makeshift barricades, their claws ripping through scrap and bone alike. The ground trembled beneath the assault, the toxic sea's distant roar drowned out by the cacophony of metal grinding and explosive blasts. Kale barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos.
"Grav, hold the east flank!"
"Lena, tend the wounded." "Mira, with me, push them back!" Grav's deep growl of acknowledgement was lost in the roar, but his heavy footsteps thundered as he positioned his heavy weapons, fingers steady despite the chaos. Lina moved swiftly, her satchel of herbs and mechanical first aid supplies a lifeline amidst the carnage. Her gentle hands worked miracles on shattered limbs and scorched flesh, her soothing words a balm against the rising tide of panic. Mira was a whirlwind of motion, her combat skills honed to lethal precision as she darted between enemies, disabling mechanical limbs and striking vulnerable joints. Yet even her fiery resolve wavered beneath the relentless onslaught. Amid the fray, Jorin crouched beside a battered relic, his slender fingers tracing the faded lines of a glowing schematic barely visible beneath layers of corrosion. His cracked glasses reflected the flickering fires around him. "Kale," he called out urgently, voice strained but steady. "There's something here, something the Warden doesn't want us to find." Kale's sharp eyes met Jorin's. "What is it?" "A pattern, a code embedded in the artifact's design. I think it's a key, a way to control or disable the beasts. If we can decipher it in time." The words hung like a fragile hope amid the storm of destruction. The Warden emerged from the shadows, a towering figure clad in patchwork armor of metal plates, his glowing red lenses piercing the gloom like malevolent stars. His voice was a low, grinding growl carried through static and mechanical distortion. "You will not take what is mine," he declared, his presence casting a shadow over the battlefield. "This sea, these beasts, they belong to me." Kel met his gaze without flinching. "Steelbone will survive. You won't stop us." The Warden snarled, unleashing a fresh wave of mechanical enforcers that surged forward with deadly precision. The crew fought back with every ounce of strength and cunning, their unity forged in the fires of hardship now tested to its limits. Amid the chaos, Lina knelt beside a wounded crew member, her hands steady despite the tremors of fear. "Hold on," she whispered, her voice a beacon of warmth. "We were not leaving anyone behind." Mira returned from a skirmish, breath ragged but eyes blazing. "We can't keep this up much longer. We need a plan, Cal." Cal's mind raced, torn between the immediate battle and the cryptic clues Jorin had uncovered. "Jorin, what do you need to unlock that code?" "Time." "And quiet," Jorin replied, his voice barely audible over the din. "Then we give you that time," Cal said, determination hardening his features. "Everyone else, hold the line. We fight not just for Steelbone, but for each other." The battle raged on, a brutal symphony of metal and fire, trust and sacrifice. As the Warden's wrath bore down, the crew's resolve burned brighter, a fierce light against the encroaching darkness. In the heart of the storm, Cal understood that survival was no longer just about endurance, it was about unity, hope, and the unyielding will to face whatever fury the sea and its tyrant could unleash. And as the first flickers of dawn threatened the toxic horizon, the question remained, would their strength be enough to withstand the Warden's fury, or would Steelbone's legacy be lost beneath the endless scrap and poison sea? The answer lay just beyond the battle, waiting to be claimed. The water around the shattered wreck was a swirling mosaic of shadows and flickering light, bioluminescent algae lending an eerie, ghostly glow to the rusted metal skeleton beneath the sea's surface. Mechanical beasts, their joints creaking and claws scraping against the corroded hull, emerged from the depths like specters of destruction, their glowing red eyes cutting through the murk. Kale's breath came steady through his regulator, his gaze sharp behind the fogged visor of his reinforced diving suit. He signaled silently to his crew, a series of precise hand gestures that carried their weight in urgent meaning. Mira was first to move, her lithe form weaving through the narrow gaps between decayed beams and shattered panels. Her fiery hair, muted beneath the water, still seemed to burn with the same fierce spirit that had propelled her from Steelbone's docks to this desperate battlefield. She struck with practiced precision, disabling a mechanical beast's limb with a swift, calculated strike that sent sparks scattering through the water like fleeting stars. Behind her, Joran's fingers danced over a portable hacking device, coaxing long-dormant ancient machinery to life. His cracked glasses caught the faint light as he activated a trap, a net of electrified cables that ensnared another beast, rendering it motionless. The wreck groaned under the strain of battle, metal plates buckling and twisted beams shifting with ominous creaks. Grav's broad shoulders and steady hands wielded heavy weapons with brutal efficiency, blasting apart the monstrosities that threatened to overwhelm them. Lina moved calmly among the chaos, her satchel of herbs and first aid supplies a lifeline to those wounded in the relentless fight. Her warm presence, even under the crushing pressure of the abyss, offered a fragile sense of hope and humanity. Cal's mind raced, calculating every move, every risk. The Warden's shadow loomed closer, a towering figure clad in patchwork armor, crimson lenses gleaming like malevolent eyes. Their duel was a clash of wills as much as weapons. Each strike Cal parried was a test of endurance and resolve. The wreck around them trembled, the sea's pressure pressing from all sides as if the ocean itself sought to crush their defiance. In a moment of harrowing clarity, Cal made a choice that would etch itself into the hearts of his crew. With a fierce cry muffled by the water, he sacrificed his own safety to shield Mira and Joran from a devastating blast. The impact sent a shockwave rippling through the wreck, metal screeching and cracking as the structure began to collapse. The crew rallied, inspired by Cal's courage, pushing forward with renewed vigor. The Warden faltered, his mechanical beasts falling one by one as the artifact, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light, was finally claimed. The aftermath was heavy with loss. Survivors clung to one another in the dim light beneath the sea, their breaths ragged but hearts steeled by the shared ordeal. The artifact's power pulsed like a heartbeat, a promise of salvation for Steelbone yet tempered by the scars carved into their souls. As they ascended from the depths, the weight of sacrifice settled over them like a shroud, but so too did a fierce, bittersweet determination to endure. Above, the toxic sea stretched endlessly, its harsh winds whispering of trials yet to come. But beneath the waves, in the shattered wreck, a new chapter had begun, one forged in courage, camaraderie, and the unyielding will to survive. "We carry more than just this artifact," Cal whispered to Mira as they broke the surface. "We carry each other. That is our true salvation." And with that, the crew set their course back to Steelbone, their found family bound tighter than ever, ready to face the uncertain dawn. The sea was silent now, save for the faint, mournful groans of the wreckage beneath. Kale sat perched on a rusted beam, jutting from the shattered remains of the underwater wreck, his gaze lost among the twisted metal and murky depths. The eerie quiet was a stark contrast to the chaos of battle that had so recently engulfed them. Around him, the toxic sea shimmered faintly, a poisonous halo casting an otherworldly glow that seemed to mock the fragility of their victory. His hands trembled slightly as he clenched them together, knuckles white against the chill that seemed to seep not just from the sea, but from within. The weight of command pressed heavily on his shoulders. heavier than any mechanical beast they had faced. The faces of those who would not return haunted him, comrades fallen to the Warden's relentless assault. Sacrifices made to claim the artifact that now rested secured within their vessel. Kale, a soft voice called, pulling him from the depths of his thoughts. Lina approached quietly, her satchel of herbs swinging gently at her side. Her sun-kissed skin glowed faintly in the dim light, and her warm eyes held a gentle insistence that he rise from his solitude. He nodded slowly, rising with a weary sigh. The two made their way back to the ship, where Mira was already tending to the wounded. The cramped space smelled of antiseptics and burnt oil, a harsh reminder of the battle's ferocity. Mira's fiery hair was damp with sweat, strands sticking to her face as she worked with practiced efficiency. Her green eyes sharp but softer now in the presence of vulnerability. "Any new injuries?" Cal asked quietly, his voice rough. Lina shook her head. "No new wounds, but the old ones still need care. And the losses? We have to find a way to carry them with us without breaking." Mira glanced up, her usual defiance softened by fatigue. "They fought for us. For Steelbone. We owe them that much." Jorin sat nearby, his slender fingers trembling as he handled salvaged data modules recovered from the wreck. His cracked glasses reflected the flickering light of the ship's console, shadows dancing across his pale face. Each piece of information he uncovered deepened his understanding of the artifact's power and the Warden's tragic past, a once protector now consumed by fear and obsession. "Every discovery feels like a weight added to my chest," Jorin admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "But it's also a beacon, a reason to keep going." Grav stood silently on deck, his broad shoulders hunched against the cold night air. His scarred face was etched with lines of fatigue and resolve. The glowing toxic sea spread out before him, endless and unforgiving. Yet, despite the exhaustion, his loyalty burned steady, a pillar for the crew to lean on. "We survived," Grav said simply, his voice gravelly but firm, "and that means we still have work to do." The crew gathered, the space between them filled with unspoken grief and the fragile threads of hope. Kale looked around at the faces battered, wary but unbroken. The cost had been high, but the victory had secured the artifact they needed to save Steelbone. Their found family, forged in fire and loss, had endured the worst and emerged stronger. Yet, as the toxic sea whispered its endless song beneath the stars, Kale knew their journey was far from over. The scars they bore were not just physical, but etched deep into their souls. Healing would be neither quick nor easy. But together they would face whatever came next, bound by survival, by trust, and the fierce determination that had carried them through the darkest depths. "Rest for now," Kale finally said, voice steady but soft. "Tomorrow we begin the real work." And beneath the endless sky, the city of Steelbone awaited their return, fragile, adrift, but alive. The legacy of their sacrifice and courage would be written in the tides yet to come. The night closed in around them, a shroud of uncertainty and hope intertwined. The voyage had taken its toll, but it had also forged something unbreakable. As the crew settled into uneasy rest, the sea's whisper promised that the story was far from finished. Their greatest trials and their greatest triumphs still lay ahead. A faint glimmer of dawn teased the horizon, heralding a new day on the scrap sea. The cost of victory was etched in every wary breath, but so too was the promise of survival, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of Steelbone's found family. The vessel creaked and groaned beneath them as it cut through the toxic sea, a jagged horizon stretching endlessly in every direction. The air was thick with the acrid stench of chemical decay, but tonight, beneath a pallid, cloud-choked sky, there was an unusual stillness. Kale stood at the helm, the artifact cradled carefully in his hands, its faint luminescence casting flickering shadows over his weathered face. Around him, the crew gathered quietly, their eyes reflecting the pale glow, a beacon against the pervasive gloom. Mira shifted her weight at the prow, the sharp edges of her silhouette outlined by the errant flickers of greenish light that danced atop the toxic waves. Her fiery hair whipped about her face in the acrid wind, but her gaze remained fixed and unyielding, scanning the murky expanse for any sign of danger. Though the battle had left scars both visible and unseen, her stance was resolute. She trusted Cal, even if he wrestled with his burdens silently. She trusted their bond forged in the furnace of adversity. Below deck, Jorin hunched over a battered workbench, the artifact's ancient mechanisms spread before him like a puzzle begging to be solved. His pale fingers brushed lightly over the intricate symbols etched into its surface, eyes sharp behind cracked lenses. The ambient hum of the ship's failing engines mingled with the faint, almost imperceptible pulse emanating from the artifact itself. As the minutes passed, the air seemed to shift to currents of the toxic sea outside, growing less hostile, the acrid fog thinning imperceptibly. Jorin's breath hitched as the realization dawned. The artifact was not merely a relic. It was a key, a source of latent power that might yet tip the balance in their favor. Lina moved quietly through the cramped quarters, her hands steady as she tended to Tess's scraped arm. The young scout winced but smiled faintly under Lina's gentle ministrations. "You will be ready for the next storm," Lina whispered, her voice a balm amid the harshness of their world. Nearby, Grav hammered steadily at a corroded hull plate, each clang a testament to his unyielding strength and dedication. The rhythmic echo was a heartbeat of resilience, a declaration that they would endure. Cale's thoughts drifted as he looked out over his crew, each member a vital thread in the fragile tapestry of their survival. The artifact's glow pulsed softly in his palm, a reminder of the immense stakes at hand. "This is only the beginning," he murmured to himself, voice low but resolute. They had secured a chance, however tenuous, to breathe new life into Steelbone. But the sea was vast and unforgiving, and the Warden's shadow still loomed large. As the ship pressed onward through the shifting mists, the crew shared quiet conversations, voices hushed yet hopeful. Stories of loss intertwined with aspirations for renewal. Mira challenged Cale gently on course decisions, their banter light, but edged with mutual respect. Jorin's discovery sparked new questions, fueling debates on the artifact's origins and potential. Lina's quiet optimism wove through their exchanges, a steady flame against the encroaching darkness. Night deepened, and the toxic sea's surface shimmered faintly beneath the artifact's glow. The oppressive weight of despair that had long hung over Steelbone seemed to lift, if only slightly. Somewhere in the distance, the faint roar of mechanical beasts echoed, a reminder of the dangers still to come. Yet, united by their shared purpose and the fragile promise in their hands, the crew faced the unknown with fierce, bittersweet determination. Cale tightened his grip on the artifact, his eyes scanning the horizon where faint, ghostly lights flickered, signs of other survivors, perhaps, or new threats lurking in the toxic depths. "Whatever comes next," he said quietly, "we face it together." But the words were a vow, a declaration of trust that he had only recently learned to voice aloud. Below deck, the artifact's pulse quickened, its light brightening as if responding to their resolve. The ship surged forward, cutting a path through the poisoned waters toward the distant promise of home. In that moment, amidst the creaking metal and whispered hopes, Steelbone's fate began to shift, fragile, uncertain, but undeniably alive. And as dawn threatened the horizon, the crew knew that their return voyage was not merely a journey home, but the first step toward a new beginning. The rumble beneath Steelbone was no longer the ominous groan of failing machinery, but a steady, vibrant heartbeat. The artifact, now embedded at the city's core, hummed with an energy that coursed through rusted pipes and worn gears, infusing life into the once dying engines. Sparks of blue and green light flickered across the control panels, illuminating the sweat and grime on Cale's face as he stood in the engine room. Around him, the crew moved with renewed purpose, their hands steady as they adjusted valves and aligned ancient cogs, coaxing the city back from the brink. Outside, the sprawling patchwork of steel and scrap that made up Steelbone seemed to breathe anew. The air, tinged with the sharp scent of oil and scorched metal, carried a promise of revival despite the ever-present haze from the toxic sea. Cal climbed a rickety scaffold overlooking the cityscape, the salty breeze tugging at his dark hair streaked with gray. Beside him stood Mira, her fiery red hair catching the faint glow, and Jorin, glasses perched askew as he scanned a worn schematic. "The engines are holding steady," Jorin reported, his voice tinged with cautious excitement. "If we keep this rhythm, we can start reinforcing the hull and expanding the energy conduits." Mira nodded, her piercing green eyes scanning the horizon beyond the city's limits. "We'll need to secure the scrap fields too. The Warden's forces won't just let us rebuild without a fight." Cal's gaze hardened, the weight of command settling once more on his shoulders. "Then we prepare. But first we heal." The crew dispersed, each member taking on tasks vital to Steelbone's rebirth. In the communal gardens, a rare patch of green, amidst the rust, Lina moved gracefully, her presence a balm to the weary hearts around her. Her satchel of herbs and salves was never far, and her gentle hands soothed both physical wounds and unseen scars. A soft murmur of gratitude followed her through the crowded workshops where plans were drawn and metal was reshaped. Grav's booming laughter echoed from the hull repair stations as he rallied the engineers. Sparks flew like fireflies in the dim light, welding seams and reinforcing weak points. His broad shoulders bore the scars of countless battles, but his spirit was indomitable. "We were not just fixing metal," he declared, "we were reforging a future." As days turned to weeks, Steelbone transformed. The engine's steady pulse powered water recyclers and air purifiers, easing the harshness of the toxic atmosphere. Children played amid the scrap towers, their laughter a rare melody against the clatter of construction. The crew's found family, once fractured by fear and loss, grew stronger, bound by shared hardship and the fragile hope of survival. Yet beneath the surface, the sea's endless expanse whispered of dangers yet to come. The Warden's shadow loomed, reminders that Steelbone's revival was but a chapter in a longer struggle. Cale stood watch on the city's highest lookout, eyes scanning the horizon where sky met toxic waves. The artifact's power was a beacon, but also a target. Turning to Mira, he spoke quietly, "We've bought time, but the sea doesn't forgive weakness. We have to be ready." She met his gaze, a fierce determination flickering in her eyes. "Together, we rebuilt from scraps once. We'll do it again." Below, the city pulsed with life, a testament to resilience amid desolation. Steelbone was adrift, but unbroken, a beacon of hope on an endless toxic sea. The journey was far from over, but for now the city breathed, and with it, the unyielding spirit of those who called it home.